All right, we are live.
Fantastic.
I'd like to introduce everyone to Susie Niehus, who is a colleague as a woman in ministry, and I would also like to thank a friend. And so I had set the broadcast for 3:05, so we're just gonna let people jump in. Susie and I were talking about beef and buying in bulk. So for full transparency, I have been buying from her sister, who is also a cattle rancher. So we not only have a woman in ministry today, but we also have a cattle rancher. And I have been buying from her sister for years, several years. In fact, I now drive across the country to pick up my year's supply of beef because it is worth it. It is, Susie was talking about educating the public to buy in bulk. And obviously we've got family in the area, but the first year we moved to Florida and we didn't have our beef. And I complained bitterly to my husband about how much it cost to buy cuts that I didn't think were, great cuts in the grocery store. And so I reached out to Chrissy and said, "Hey, can we get on the list for half a steer?" And my husband and I have figured out the way to take it cross country. We've got the right coolers. My husband has a system to keep it cold, and we have no defrosting or anything as we cross the country, and we normally do it in about 18 hours. The beef stays solid we've done it for up to 30 hours, depending on when we get on the road, like when we pick up from the packing plant and get on the road. So, I think the last time we did it, there was one chub of hamburger that we needed that I wasn't going to refreeze, that we cooked up immediately, which was not a hardship for us at all. But it's, anyway, so we've figured that out. All right. So Susie is she works in a local church. She's an ordained pastor in a local church. In children's ministry and also preaching, worship leadership. She's a rancher, which is, as I told her, like for normal people, this is just being a rancher is a full-time job. But she's also a speaker, and she has a platform called Preaching from the Pasture, which is, and she's done all sorts of speaking engagements all over Oklahoma. She's in grad school, finishing a master's. She's deeply involved in the agricultural community, and she is raising her children in the ag community. But not just her children. This is such a passion for her and such a lifestyle that it's not just her kids, but she's working with the community's children, anyone who's passionate about agriculture. And then for other people who might not know this, in the ranching community, it is calving season, which is like, as she said, it's like Christmas in the church, or it's like Black Friday on retail, only it's 24 hours a day for about 6 weeks, as you try to take care of the cows, the cows and the calves, and making sure everyone's doing okay. Susie told me as we got on earlier that the Oklahoma wind has gotten her, and she is just, as you can tell, she is a little under the weather. So we are going to be patient with her if her voice goes, but we are really excited to be in conversation with Susie. So do you want to open up and tell us a little bit about what you do with your church position,
Sure.
and the uniqueness of you in your church?
Well, I have been a full-time staff member serving my congregation for a little over 9 years, but I did not start out thinking that I would ever end up in ministry. I actually have an ag business degree. And so this whole journey got started when my son was about 3. I volunteered to do a children's Christmas program at our church because we weren't going to have one. And I was that mom that thought we really should have a Christmas program for the kids, mostly because I wanted my son to be in the program, you know. And so that went well. And I got offered a position at the church. And they said, we really just need a part-time children's ministry director, I think was the word at the time. And I was like, I really like my kid, but I'm not completely sure about all these other kids. And this is not like my field of expertise. And so they convinced me to try it for 6 months. I'm still waiting on that 6-month evaluation. As the staff changed over the years, my position kind of morphed to fit the needs of the church. Today, I am still the children's minister. I was ordained in 2017. I'm also head of women's ministry. I do all of the church marketing in terms of web design, social media, that kind of stuff. I manage the church email database. I do preach and have helped with young adults ministry, small groups. There's this disclaimer in the bottom of my job description. I would caution anyone who sees this on a job description. It says, and anything else for the benefit of First Christian Church. And that is kind of my job. I don't think 2 days are the same. It's anything else for the benefit of First Christian Church, you know?
Yeah. So the question that came to mind first was, what time do you get up in the morning? Because you've got to be nonstop. There's no downtime.
No, probably the more embarrassing question would be, what time do I go to bed at night? I rise early, and then as it starts to get dark, I kind of go down with that whole light situation. But yeah, sometimes I honestly think my calendar is too busy, and that's something that I'm really trying to do better at managing. But I struggle to say no to things, and as a mom that's right in the middle of raising kids, schedules get full really fast.
Yeah. No, and you're always busy with your kids. So if you follow Susie on Facebook, you will find that she does not curate her life. Like, you get to see. She is not curating things for social media. She is telling you what's happening that day, the good, the bad, the ugly, sometimes really funny and sometimes really poignant, but it's really real. So that just FYI, if you want to follow Susie. All right. So when we started talking about you coming on and doing the live event with us, you said, just FYI, here are some of the things I've done. So you have preached, prayed, and spoken in some really interesting places. So you've prayed at the Oklahoma Senate. Mm-hmm. You've preached at the largest women's prison in Oklahoma. You've done Cowboy Church. You have organized and preached or keynoted at women's conferences. Mm-hmm. And you've done, my personal favorite is Horse Camp. But you told a story about like preaching during, was it a rodeo or a roping event?
A team roping, yeah.
Okay, all right. Share that because that's really interesting. For pastors who get nervous about preaching, listen to this story.
So it's been probably several months ago. There was a team roping, which is an event, horseback event, where two people work together to rope a steer. And it was happening on a Sunday morning. And a lady reached out to me and said, hey, would you be interested in speaking? Since we're having this on Sunday morning, we want to have church in the arena. And so partway through the roping, they stopped everything. They shut down the roping, and I stood in the middle of a dirt-filled arena with a giant trash barrel as my podium, and people were sitting on the fences and in their lawn chairs, and some of them were sitting on their horses, just kind of 360 all around me. And I delivered a message.
That's amazing. To me, just the nerves of preaching the regular, quote unquote, regular way, So how was it for you? What was it? Because you did barrel racing at one point, right?
I did. And I roped in, I ran barrels and roped and rodeoed in college. So, for me, that's a very comfortable environment to be in socially. I wasn't sure how my message would be received. Excuse me. But I was really pleasantly surprised. And there's something authentic and genuine about no fuss to the service. Nobody was worried about which slide was on the screen. Nobody was concerned if the chairs were set up correctly or straight or what anybody was wearing. And it was simple. And I enjoyed that part of it. That didn't feel nerve-wracking at all. Just the possibility that maybe it wouldn't be received well, but it was. And so it was really a great experience.
That is so cool. And so of all these events, do you have a favorite event that you like to do?
I always say that my favorite one is the next one that's coming. That's kind of my personality in general. I don't necessarily love to do the same thing over and over again. So the excitement or the challenge of what are we going to do next? How are we going to pull that off? It's kind of fun to me.
Yeah. So do you have a next event coming up?
I have a couple. In I think 2 weeks, I'm headed to Caldwell, Kansas, which is my mother-in-law's hometown, to speak at a Wednesday night event for a little farming community of about 300. And I haven't been there in several years, so I'm looking forward to that. And then I got a call. Actually, you don't even know this, Susan, because I haven't told you. I got a call last week asking if I would bring horses back to Maranatha Bible Camp in Everton, Missouri. And so we're going to put on a family camp the first weekend in November at Maranatha Bible Camp. And I've been invited to be their keynote speaker and to travel with horses. So.
I told you.
Yeah.
So to be announced, Susie and I are doing a horse camp, i.e. I'm going to be the Susie's doing the horses and and I'm going to be there to help, but I get to stand next to the horses. Mm-hmm. So yeah, no, to be announced later.
I think it's workable. I totally think it's workable.
Yeah, no. Okay, so we need to back up. I think people need to know. So just the idea of horse camp is really exciting for anyone, especially for women. Like I had a horse when I was younger, younger, like in my 20s. And so there's something special about horses. And so one time Susie posted on her Facebook page that I believe it was a birthday gift for one of your daughter's friends. She wanted to ride horses. And you checked her out of school. And the reason that she was checked out was for equine
science.
Equine science field trip.
Right.
And the number of women who commented saying that they wanted someone, please check them out of life for an equine science field trip. Mm-hmm. And that's where the idea has come that we, this needs to be a thing.
I'm for it. I'm totally for it.
So I wanted to ask you, so I know ranching, having watched you from afar, ranching is a lifestyle. It's not a job. Like you're never not ranching. But how do you feel? Do you feel that ranching is a calling also?
Absolutely. I mean, it's definitely a lifestyle that, when you grow up in it, it's been a part of your family for generations. It becomes a part of who you are for sure. But I completely believe in business for the glory of God too. I'm very business minded. I enjoy that side of our operation, of our ranch. And I think that so much of our faith goes into what we're doing in the ranching industry, the ethical treatment of animals, being a good steward of our land and our resources and our equipment, loving our neighbor as we serve our customers. Those are all biblical principles. that you can't separate, your faith from your business. And I think that is part of what makes it a calling.
Yeah, no, it's just, it's so cool. It's just to see how you manage all of it. All right. So in the midst of your very busy life, do you have a spiritual practice or something that helps fill your spiritual well because you pour out for a whole lot of people, like you are constantly, not just your family, but the community, your church, and the community around you. I mean, you are constantly going and doing for a lot of people. So what do you do to help like your own, like fill your well
Sure.
so that you can pour out?
Honestly, that's a concept I've had to learn kind of the hard way, of running out and of being on empty and of finding myself a time or two or three in not a very good place because I was spent. For me now, I think it's kind of interesting when you work full time in a church. Sunday morning is a day of work. It's not a day of rest. It's not even a day of, you know, not even a day of learning or refilling or anything like that. And so for me, getting alone and quiet time at my house, whether I go for a walk, whether I jump on a horse and go for a ride, those are the places where I really feel like I can disconnect from the things of this world and draw close to God. And you know, the piece of being in a very rural area plays a huge role in that. And honestly, you can bash technology and being connected, but it's also a blessing because I have resources available that, I think about 20 years ago, where did pastors go to learn or to grow? If you were ministering in a small rural church somewhere, how would you even connect with other pastors? And so technology has been a huge blessing in that respect to give me resources to study and to learn. I follow a handful of pastors that I listen to their podcasts and enjoy just listening to them preach.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So I wanted to, we've talked about ministry a little bit, but I want to talk about what you're doing in the ranching business, because you have revolutionized the way family ranchers sell their beef, at least for you all. I think you're definitely a model, but I think it's interesting. So if anyone, we've heard a little bit, it's been in the news about the big meat packing plants and all of that. But can you share a little bit about how you, what you're doing with your ranch and how you are marketing to the consumer? And just, can you share a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, I woke up one day, probably 5, 6, 8 years ago, something like that, and realized that there was a massive monopoly controlling my industry. And I don't like that at all. And so I started doing the math on where the money was going in between the time the animal left my house and the time it got on, it made it to the supermarket or ultimately to someone's freezer or their plate. And I started thinking about what it would look like to cut the middleman out, to sell a product that was more economical for consumers and ultimately to make a bigger profit on the cattle that we were selling. And so my husband and I actually we had a lady from our church ask us if we would feed a calf out for her because she was into some new diet and wanted to buy fresh beef. And we said, yeah, if we're going to feed one for her, we might as well feed one for ourselves. We'll just try this. And again, I grew up on a cattle ranch. And so when you grow up with generations of this is how you raise cattle and this is what you do, getting away from the traditions you've been taught is not something that is just like lightning fast to come to you always. Because there's a lot of days that I'm like, well, this isn't how my dad did it. This isn't how my mom did it. So is it even right? Am I messing up by doing it differently? So anyways, long story short, we fed out this calf and ended up selling half of the one we were keeping. It was really easy to sell. And so my husband said, well, let's try doing this again. So the next time we got crazy and we said we're gonna feed out 3, and we're just gonna see if we can sell 3. And it wasn't hard to sell. And so every time we kept adding like one more to the harvest. And then when COVID happened, my phone started blowing up. And that's something that I think about that's just really interesting to me, because COVID was so detrimental to so many small businesses, and yet mine boomed. And it's like I can see God's hand in it, and I can see how God was preparing us to be ahead of the game and to be ready. And when COVID happened, we were ready to expand, and we had this massive influx of customers. So here we are, fast forward a couple years later. A year ago, Nate and I set a 5-year goal to sell 24 butcher beef per quarter. We met that 5-year goal last year in year number 1. And we're on schedule to surpass that. We're already ahead of that goal for this year. And I've already made harvest dates and butcher appointments for 24 a month for 2023. You know, repeat customers, social media, word of mouth. It's been an amazing thing. And I think what people are starting to see is that they're getting a better product for less money than if they were to buy it at the supermarket. There is source verification to know where the meat is coming from. There's value in knowing how the cattle were cared for. There is now a group of consumers that are willing to even pay more, if need be, to know that they're getting a healthier product than what they might have to offer at the store. You know, here's something that just blows my mind. When you purchase beef at the supermarket or wherever you buy beef, and it has a USDA label on it that says American made or USA beef, all that label means is that the beef was butchered in a USDA inspected butchering facility. They can import that meat from anywhere and butcher it in a USDA, or maybe not anywhere, but from a number of different countries. And then as long as they run it through that USDA processor, it gets an American beef label on it. And the people I tell that to are just shocked a lot of the time.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
So, you know, we're becoming a culture that's more aware of our food choices. And that's just been a huge blessing for my business.
Now you've, so just recently you started on TikTok to reach more customers.
I'm really bad at TikTok though. So let's just be honest about that for starters.
And then you've started a delivery service.
Right.
In North. Can you explain? So I made the mistake of saying you're shipping, and you're not. And you corrected me right away. Not shipping. I'm delivering, because you said there's the product. The difference between selling an animal and selling a package is there are a lot of rules around that.
Right. So we sell beef in bulk. We sell quarters, halves, or whole beef. And then I find other customers. If you don't want the whole entire beef, I match up other customers. And ultimately, we are selling you a steer. Well, because I'm selling you an animal, we don't have to charge sales tax. The minute it turns to a package of meat that I'm selling you, all the rules change. Rules about crossing state lines change. Rules about how we sell it change, and what butcher facility the meat can be processed in. So there's 3 levels of butchering facilities. There's custom butchers, state inspected, and USDA inspected. They all follow the same guidelines. The difference is, in a state inspected butcher, you have a state inspector on site that's supposed to verify everything that's being done. And in a USDA inspected facility, you have a USDA inspector. Well, guess which one gets paid more? So the USDA facilities are much more expensive to butcher in. The state inspected are more expensive than the custom. And the custom butchers are the most cost effective, but you can't sell packages of meat from them. So I make the appointments, and I connect the customers. We deliver their animals to the butcher. They pick up their meat directly from the butcher, or they hire our delivery driver now to bring it to them. And we've had people, we're in Northeast Oklahoma, but we've had people drive in from Bronx, New York. We've had a customer that's not Susan Rose come from Florida to pick up beef. We've sent beef to the Fighting Illini football coaching staff in Illinois. We've sent beef to Missouri, to Arkansas, lots of folks from Oklahoma. We've had people from Dallas and Fort Worth and Houston drive up from Texas, people from Kansas City, Missouri come in. I mean, so we've had people come from a pretty good distance. You know, the cattle that are at the butcher right now have people coming. We have two different customers driving up from Texas, one coming from Nebraska, one coming from Kansas City. Everybody else is Arkansas or Oklahoma. But, you know, with this delivery option now, I mean, I can pay mileage to the delivery driver cheaper than we can put it on a pallet and ship it. When you get over 20 pounds, shipping becomes a completely different, complicated thing. And because the meat has to be kept cold, it gets much more expensive to ship it quickly.
Yeah. No.
I can't help but think too, with fuel prices on the rise and everything else, that's just going to get astronomically more expensive.
Yeah. No. Everything's gonna come down. Yeah, to the bottom line. You know, like everything's gonna cost more. Yeah. All right. So that was. We have a giveaway. Susie has a T-shirt that she has. As for me and my house, we will eat Niehus beef. Is that correct? Yeah. It's a cute T-shirt. I've seen it. And Susie has generously donated a T-shirt. To be eligible for this T-shirt, what I need you to do is to drop your favorite beef recipe. Like you don't have to pull it up on one of the recipe sites, but just say, I like, like what's your favorite beef recipe to cook? So Susie has also shared generous, here's a pro tip for working moms when you have to feed a crowd really fast. She posts those about every other month.
How to cook frozen beef. That's usually because you didn't remember to thaw it out. You know, that's usually how it goes.
That was me earlier this week throwing stuff in the crock pot because when my husband said, what's for dinner? I'm like, hang on. We pulled out some stew meat. I put it in the crock pot with some potatoes and onions and it was good. Cool. It's good several hours later. So that's how you can, if you would like to be eligible for a T-shirt, we will pick one name randomly, but just drop in the comments either on this video or on our sites because we're streaming live on Facebook. Just put in the comments what is your favorite beef recipe to cook. And maybe we can generate some new ideas for new things to do. If people would like to contact you for either a speaking engagement or for preaching or for Niehus beef, how can they get a hold of you?
So probably the easiest way is to find me on Facebook or to go to our website. The ranch has a Facebook page at the Niehus Ranch, or our website is www.theniehusranch.com.
All right. And I have dropped those in the comments also, and I will put those on the Facebook feeds as well. Susie, is there anything else that you want to share? I mean, we have gone through really quickly. Did we talk about that you were the first ordained woman in the 112 year? Okay, see, we've already missed things. All right. We're going to circle back before we, I knew we were missing something. So why don't you share, you were the first
Okay,
one.
So the church where I attend and where I work has actually been a church longer than Oklahoma has been a state. It is one of the two original churches in our town. And in 2017, everything kind of lined up in a beautiful way for me to answer the call on my life through ordination, and had a mentor who was really walking me through the process of what that meant and encouraging me to step up and step out with my call. And so I was ordained through our church, and at the time, I honestly didn't know. Ignorance is bliss sometimes. And I didn't understand what a big deal that was. I was raised in a pretty liberal congregation where women in leadership was not a new or unheard of thing, and that was not the same in my home congregation now. And so I have been on a journey full of learning experiences about what it means to be a female ordained pastor.
Mm-hmm. So, in the 112 years of your church being in existence, you are the only woman to preach in that church. You're the only ordained woman, right?
So there have been other women who have been asked to speak at the church, but I am the only ordained female pastor to have
Yeah.
worked or served.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you said that that earlier you just made mention that culturally in ranching, which tends to be, it's not, it's so hard to say that it's male dominated because it's really a partner. It's really a partner operation that they're, and you were talking about, can you share a little bit about that conversation that we had?
Sure. Well, growing up in the ranching industry, I come from a long, long line of farmers and ranchers, but I'm a third generation female cattle rancher. And so I grew up in a home where there was never a discussion about your gender based on the task at hand. It was everyone jumps in and pulls their own weight and does their part, and everyone's opinion is respected and expected to be shared. And the best opinion is the one we'll go with, and that kind of thing. And as I grew up and became an adult in the industry, I can't think of a single time I've ever felt disrespected by men who are fellow cattle ranchers. My opinion is appreciated. My work ethic is respected. My knowledge of the cattle industry is accepted as valuable. And so, I've spent a fair amount of time in a male-dominated field in many ways, but never as a second-class citizen. And when I entered into ordination and found myself in a pastor position, that same level of respect is not always given. And that was pretty shocking to me. Again, ignorance is bliss. My dad and my husband and my father-in-law, all very encouraging, very, very, very respectful. And so it was interesting. It's been an interesting journey to have to navigate new waters.
Mm-hmm. No, very interesting. That to me was really interesting because that's as I shared, my doctoral research was in the inequity of women in ministry, even today, even in mainline denominations. And so to hear that in an industry that is at least theoretically male dominated, as the front facing with the cattle industry, and that you never had any issues, and yet in ministry you did. I thought, I was heartbroken. I was really heartbroken. But that's why we're doing some of these live events and just trying to raise awareness and visibility that of women in ministry and just all the different hats that women wear. So you said the only difference about women cattle ranchers and male cattle ranchers is that after a long day, the woman goes in and then cooks dinner. So
Yep.
That was hilarious.
I think my mom will amen me on that one too, probably somewhere.
Yeah. All right. Is there anything else you want to share? I feel like that this is just a down payment that like we just zoomed through like a whole lot of topics because anyone, ministry, that could have been a whole broadcast. Your speaking engagements, that could have been a whole broadcast. Ranching could have been a whole broadcast. We didn't even touch on what you're doing in grad school. that, so I feel like this is a down payment. And so, I think we're going to do something again, but is there anything else you want to share in this broadcast?
Goodness. I don't know how to wrap all of those different things up into one pretty bow. But if I would just say, if there is a lady that's out there watching today who's second guessing herself, and I would just encourage you to be bold with whatever call has been placed on your life, regardless of what the expectations are in terms of your industry or your profession. When you know God's called you to do something, just step up and do it.
Amen. And I don't think I think that's the perfect place to end. So thank you for joining us. If you'd like to be entered in the t-shirt giveaway, go ahead and drop your favorite beef recipe in the comments. And we will, next month, we are doing a live event in May. And it's called Moms and Ministers. We're going to have 2 moms who are ministers. Susie is also a mom and a minister. We're going to have 2 other moms and ministers. We're going to talk about being a mom in ministry right before Mother's Day. So join us next month. Thank you so much for your time, Susie.
Thanks for having me.
I just so appreciate your story and sharing you with the rest of us. So thank you.
My pleasure.